Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today, the show is about obsession and disobsession. And we have with us, to understand deeply and even more about it, our friend André Cabral from New Jersey. He's here with us, and he's going to help us talk about this topic that is quite intriguing. And this show has been planned way before the tragedy that happened yesterday. So today, the experimenters of Kardec Radio invite us, all of us, to pray together for all the communities that are suffering in Newtown, Connecticut. We don't want to explain anything about the very case, actually, because only God knows the reasons why such things happen. What we know is that Joana de Angelis, in the book Recipes for Peace, she talks about the way we dream of a happier world and vindicate the social moral transformation on the earth. And she says, we are invited to peace, to these recipes for peace, as much as Allan Kardec, in the Gospel According to Spiritism, offers in chapter 5 a beautiful, not only explanation, but invitation to soothe our hearts and our minds when problems such as this happen. Chapter 5 is Blessed are the Afflicted. It's all about the causes of our afflictions and how we surrender to God's care. As Allan Kardec published in this very chapter, Chapter 5 of the Spirit's book, a message by Sanson, a former member of the Parisian Spiritist Society, when talking about the loss of loved ones and premature deaths, they say, rejoice instead of complaining when it pleases God to take one of his children from this valley of misery. Would it not be selfish to wish for them to have remained in order to suffer along with us? That is the grief conceived by those who have no faith, who see in death an eternal separation. But you Spiritists know that the soul lives better when disencumbered from its corporeal envelope. Mothers, you know your beloved children are close to you, very close. Their spiritual bodies envelop you. Their thoughts watch over you, and your memory of them inebriates them with joy. But your unreasonable sorrow afflicts them too, because it denotes a lack of faith and is a revolt against God's will. You who understand the spirit life, listen to the beating of your heart, calling to those loved ones. And if you would ask God to bless them, you would feel within you those powerful consolations that dry tears, those marvelous aspirations that show you the future promised by the sovereign Lord. Dear listener, we thank you for being there at this very moment. So we pray, because we ask at this moment of difficulties, challenges, and true tragedies, like the one that happened yesterday in Newtown, Connecticut. We ask, what can we do to reach out to those who are experiencing the loss of loved ones, and especially to the father of the very man who shot all those children and those adults at the school? We cannot imagine what this father may be feeling, what his brother may be feeling as well, because they stay whereas the mother is gone in a tragic way, as well as a brother and a son who lost his mind in desperation in something that we cannot quite grasp, and it's not on us to judge. It's on us to be proactive. Not doing our job in regards to the loss, the human loss. It's about how we can reach out to the hearts and the minds, because we spiritists have at hand a very comforting tool to reach out to those people who are suffering, and it is through prayer. Judgment is not going to help us. So let us pray right now. Wherever you are, pray to the children who passed away in such difficult conditions, to the teachers, to their families, especially the parents, to the whole school community, to the nation, dear Lord. We now bow in true reverence to you, not knowing the reasons why such human-made disasters happen, but understanding that we are all under your guidance. Please help all the hearts of those who are deeply suffering at this very moment. May they receive a basket of healing remedies to comfort their hearts, to console their minds, to calm them down. And may we as a nation revisit with courage and strength the core values inside of us. And we pray especially for parents who have a sacred mission at hand, that they apply a loving discipline, leading their children to God, so we can create a better civilization, a civilization of compassion, a civilization of compassion and love, light and healing. May all the discarnate spirits who are involved in this matter also receive the shower light. And if we may, dear Father, we would like to extend the best of this prayer, involving in forgiveness and compassion the heart of the gunman, Adam Lanza, his mother, his brother who says, along with his father, may the mercy of your loving heart envelop him, because as our Master Jesus said, we don't know what we do when we are committing evil. We know, dear Lord, that in your justice, love and charity, all the souls of the children who departed were kindly rescued by loving angelic hands. But may those who stay never give up on life, knowing that soon they will be together again So please give everyone strength to keep on going in this life, undergoing this trial with dignity, with grace, and most especially with faith in you. Thank you, Father, and so be it. Dear listener, in this grave moment of the earth, it's not only the United States though, as you know. Everywhere on the earth we have tragedies equal and worse than the one we've experienced yesterday in the United States. We know that in many locations, sometimes remote locations on the earth, children are also being abused, are also being mistreated, are being murdered, and many injustices are still happening around. The question that comes to us is, what can we do in the extension of our possibilities to help? Well, besides our own behavior and accommodating it to the best of our conscience, we also need to share the resources we have, whether spiritual, emotional, physical resources, but we need to share. Leaving pride and selfishness aside, and especially, dear listener, growing mature, thinking less of ourselves, and especially for many people who listen to Kardec Radio and have access to Facebook, let us use Facebook in an ever more compassionate way, sharing good news. And that's the reason why I would like to share with you. There is a beautiful website that exists right there, goodnewsnetwork.com. If you are sad about sad news, though we need to know of some of it, but fill up your mind with good news as well, because there is much goodness happening around the world. And there is a website, goodnewsnetwork.com, put together by a very smart journalist who has been doing this for 15 years, day in, day out, with beautiful news of people who are making a difference, people and organizations who are doing great deeds. Go there, keep it in your cell phone, share at your Facebook, because though some tragedy may happen here or there, one thing we know, the world is going to get better, no matter how much we resist it, because the law of progress, as Allan Kardec placed it in the Spirit's book, is inevitable. And also we have our sister radio located in Miami, Florida, Web Radio Bezerra, online at www.spiritist.com. They stream Kardec Radio's programs 3 times a day and many other beautiful programs in Portuguese and in Spanish. Not only Kardec Radio in English. And there's a lot to share with you. Today the program fits in very perfectly with the tragedy. We would say when our minds get lost in sadness, in negativity, we're not alone. We're not alone, and it's likely that those who take a gun and shoot others, they are not alone here either. Because when we commit crimes, we're not alone as much as when we do good works. It's always a team effort. It's about obsession. It's about this negative influence that we may experience at different levels, and we're going to talk about it to get to know more about the ins and outs and what to do, which is the therapy for the obsession, called in Spiritism Disobsession. We are going to interview our friend André Cabral, who is a Spiritist practitioner and one of the coordinators, together with Marcos Miranda, in the Spiritist group Path of Light in Long Branch, New Jersey. It's a beautiful conversation, very enlightening, very inspirational, very practical. For now, would like to kickstart the beginning of this conversation with a beautiful message that may be an explanation to all of us who are out there. It's Emmanuel's message, The Kingdom of God is at Hand, put together by the voiceover of our friend Luiz Sérgio Marota. Please listen to this and share the news that Kardec Radio is here to nourish your soul.
The kingdom of God is at hand. Many times said the Lord, the kingdom of God is at hand. Until today, thousands of people have waited for its arrival through spectacular exterior events. Many expect it through unspeakable cataclysms and feed their imagination with ghostly scenes incompatible with the divine mercy which presides our destinies. Thunders rumble in the firmament. Tsunamis and earthquakes. Mutinous crowds causing ruin. Flammable fluids in the atmosphere, turning it into devouring fire. Withering bombs destroying entire nations. Those people usually count on the uncanny and the fantastic so that they can feel they are at the gateway of the great change. There is no doubt that such catastrophic events may take place at any moment in people's experience in the field of nature. However, far from meaning the kingdom of God, they only reveal the need for a new battle, with a rougher work to be done by those who take part in the evolutional boards of humanity. The kingdom of God is at hand, yes it is, but before all else, in our capacity to build it inside us through the heaven that we can offer to our neighbor's soul. Let's attend to the accomplishments of the duties life brings to us, helping as much as we can for the victory of the good by following the love the Lord bequeathed to us, and we will reach, as early as possible, the celestial atmosphere for us and for others. That's why Jesus likewise was adamant and fair when stated, when they say to you that the kingdom of God is here or there, do not believe them, because, in truth, the kingdom of God is within you. Emmanuel. Psychography, Chico Xavier. Free translation.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
a new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
And now we return to our program.
So, dear listener, we're here with our dear friend André Cabral, who is also a Spiritist practitioner, worker of the Spiritist group Path of Light in New Jersey, Long Branch, New Jersey, beautiful city. And the website of the center is www.pathoflightnj.org. He works together with our dear friend Marcos Miranda in a beautiful way of disseminating the Spiritist news in the Long Branch city. Thank you so much, André, for being with us at Kardec Radio today.
My pleasure, Vanessa. Thank you for having me here today.
André, one of the main tenets in Spiritism is the understanding that this interaction between the two realms is so natural, the influence of spirits in our lives and vice versa, but certain events may occur that may bring some form of disturbance, and we call it in Spiritism obsession, which by definition, as Kardec said in chapter 23 of the Medium's book, obsession is that persistent negative influence of one spirit mind over another. Not necessarily a discarnate spirit, can be from incarnate to incarnate, but can you tell us more, as you were talking about mediumship and the mediumistic meetings, can you tell us more about the levels of obsession in our everyday lives so people who are listening to us can identify some of these elements?
Yeah, you said very properly. Spirits, incarnate and discarnate spirits, are nothing but discarnate people. From this basic principle, we understand many other things that before was just hard to understand, and myth. Kardec asks you the spirits about how much the spirits influence in our lives, and the answer is more than you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
We can identify the three basic levels of influence of obsession, and I'd like to put first that being obsessed means mostly being under the influence of an obsessor. Exactly.
So there is a huge difference. We'll always be under some form of spirit assault.
They will try, but it depends also of us to give in, to have show some type of affinity with them. So
exactly.
And this is the let's call it the level one of obsession, the simple harassment, simple assault, simple attempts. And that can escalate to the next level that we call fascination. Fascination, it's a very, very difficult way, a level of obsession to prevent, to help the obsessed one. Because the fascination works in the vanity, in the brain of the obsessed.
So it means that the person is blind. They are not discerning correctly. They think they are correct, but they are not. Their judgment is impacted by the influence of another mind, right?
Exactly. And this other mind, it reminds me of that movie, The Devil's Advocate.
Yeah.
If you've seen the movie, remember what was the last phrase in the movie?
That Al Pacino said?
Yeah, you look at in the final scene of the movie, Al Pacino look at the camera and says, "Vanity is still my favorite sin." So in the movie, he was the devil, but he declared himself, "I never do evil. I utilize your resources."
Oh wow!
So in this the process of fascination, the spirit, the obsessor, works very sophisticatedly in the vanities and the weak of his victim. Let's call victim, but again, it's not a very proper term. And then he starts subtly infiltrating thoughts in the obsessed mind, and it makes the obsessed one think that those thoughts belong to him or her.
Yeah.
So it's a very subtle process. It's very difficult to identify by the person who is being obsessed. It's easily identified by those who understand, who know the process, those who are experienced in working in disobsession works. But it's very, let's call victim. It's very difficult to be recognized by the victim. The victim always ends up thinking that the whole world is against me, nobody understands me, things like that.
You're right, exactly. And then when they least expect,
right, and then escalating to the next level is the possession. The possession is like the...
Or what they call subjugation, right?
Subjugation, yes. When the obsessed one is completely subjugated by the obsessor. That person loses momentarily, of course, their own control, the motor control. If you see those people on the street singing, talking by themselves, not talking on the Bluetooth nowadays. You see people walking down the street, speaking on the Bluetooth, right? But not those that I'm talking about. I'm talking about those who are talking to their invisible, discarnate obsessors on the street. You see people, I've seen this all over, especially here in the New York area, in the subways. I see people talking to the walls, talking to themselves aloud. They are in this process of subjugation, of total possession. Yeah. The discarnate spirit, the obsessor spirit, it's taking possession of the bodily functions of the person.
So the will
really
of the person is impaired, right? The will of the person. It's like the cases of the drug addicts, the homeless people. You tell them, come on, come here, let me help you, or come to the shelter, and they're like, no, I prefer to stay in the street. Or drug addicts, they say, I wish I could be strong enough to stop using drugs. I want to stop, but I can't. So it's like their will is impaired, whereas in fascination, they are impaired in their judgment, right?
Exactly. The judgment is impaired. The will is impaired. So they are like a puppet in an obsessor's hand. And sometimes it's not only one obsessor. It's a group. It's a legion, like mentioned in the Bible. It's a legion obsessing one incarnate person.
But as you said, the first level, Kardec talks about the simple obsession or common obsession because it's more common than we imagine. And people are like, really, what does that mean? So people are like maybe wondering, like, what is the case of the simple obsession, which doesn't take you to the psychiatric unit yet, or doesn't make you commit crimes in such cases of fascination? What could be like an example or some examples of common obsession in everyday lives that people could really use for some form of identification?
Those actions that we practice, and after practice, after we did it, we stop and say, I don't know why I did that. I shouldn't have done that. Things like that. When you do things, when you practice the evil, for example, without thinking that much, you are ported by an evil mind. One discarnate spirit is next to you, one or more than one are next to you, influencing you to practice those actions. And they work through thoughts and magnetism. And this is another matter that we could talk the whole day about it. And all of a sudden, you have already done what normally you wouldn't do. This is one very simple sign of obsession. Other, let's say, signs of obsession is discomfort. That constant, you feel depressed, you feel sadness, dismay, things that it's not. You are normal. Normally, you're not like that. But all of a sudden, you don't recognize yourself. When you are having thoughts that normally you don't have, it's not part of your culture, like suicidal, for example. When you start thinking of revenge, you are constantly thinking of revenging something that you suffered from, sometimes even a minor thing, that somebody offended you in a very light way that you easily forgive. But now you only think about that. You only think of revenge.
Exactly.
So when the thoughts that you have populate in your brain most of the times, and are thoughts that are not part of your routine, part of your personality, you may believe that those thoughts belong to somebody else.
Exactly. They say that if we are not attuned with high positive thoughts and emotions, there is no way that we can be on standby and connected to nobody. We'll be connected to other types of thoughts, which may be less fortunate or unhealthy ones, as you're mentioning. So we only have two options, either elevating our thoughts and feelings, or we're going to stay down and connected to minds that are just like feeling like that and thinking like that, right?
Exactly.
It's what André Luiz calls the law of the mental field in the book Mechanisms of Mediumship. But André, as you're saying this, we're merging into the topic of the therapy of it, which is, you call in Spiritism, disobsession, which is the spirit release therapy. How does it work? Because some people who are unaware of Spiritism tend to say, oh, please tell the spirit to go to the light, thinking that just commanding them to go to the light, and whatever this light they may think it is, the spirits are just going to turn their back and, okay, I will, and then they turn their back and go to whatever this light means for people who say that. But that's not the Spiritist approach, right?
Spirits are nothing but discarnate people. If there's somebody bugging you, and you tell them, let's say, you're walking down the street, go see the light, the person's going to laugh on you, right?
Of course, I would
the spirit
do too.
does the same. Because the difference between the discarnate people, the discarnate spirit, and the incarnate spirit is the flesh, is the matter, the body. So talk and think of spirits like you think of anyone else, like an incarnate person. And to avoid obsession, you have to be in a positive frequency, let's call. You have to be positive all the time. You have to be better every day. And the light, the light is correct. Go see the light. But see the light yourself first. What is the light of the world?
Exactly.
Right? I would condense the light of the world in the gospel. The Jesus teachings, that's the light of the world. And he said himself, I'm the light, right? I'm the light, the life, I'm the path. And once we understand his message, and again, I'm not talking about religion. I'm not a religious man. I see the Spiritism as a very serious, very deep science. And but Jesus was a messenger. He was a teacher, one instructor. He came to give us to leave this legacy of education, moral education. Once we understand his message and practice, we are already one step ahead of the big crowd. And the more we elevate ourselves, the more we distance from obsessors, from bad spirits, from bad people, ultimately.
Yeah, because Emmanuel said that we should live amongst the ones who know more to learn from them, and the ones who know less to help them and teach them. So you don't live amongst the ones who know less, allowing yourself to go downhill, right?
Right.
So it's a matter of life choice. So in that regard, André, as you told me before we started this interview, it's such a long topic, and it's so deep and fascinating, but we have to go to a break. And when we come back, we want to know more about this book that the Spirit Dr. André Luiz put together through Chico Xavier, entitled Disobsession. Okay?
Okay.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio. live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
A new great book and tool for kids and educators. The children's book, Our Father by the Spirit May, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is available for purchase at www.edisayofamerica.com. Buy your copy today.
Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.edicofamerica.com today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program. A reading from the book Disobsession, Preparation for a Counseling Meeting by the Spirit Andre Luiz through Francisco Cândido Xavier, a different book. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him. Luke chapter 8, verse 30. While doing disobsession activity in the Gardanus region, Jesus can be observed kindly talking to an obsessed person who had been brought to him at the same time as he makes himself heard by the unhappy disincarnates also present there. It is important to notice that when the Master asked for a name, the medium, conscious of the pressure he was suffering from the disturbed and errant spirits, informed his name to be Legion, to which the evangelist adds that the obsessed man behaved in this fashion because many demons had entered into him. We now know from the teachings of the codifier of the Spiritist doctrine, Allan Kardec, in item 6 of chapter 12 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, love your enemies, that those demons are nothing more than the souls of perverse men who have not yet divested themselves from material instincts. In this episode, we observe Christ speaking simultaneously to the medium and the communicating spirits in the meritorious task of collective counseling, thus teaching us that disobsession is not a hunt for the phenomenon, but rather patient work of love coupled to knowledge and reasoning associated with faith. Whether it is the case of a slight interference or a more generalized possession, the mediumistic mind remains oppressed by thoughts strange from itself, in a state of hypnosis from which only very gradually it will become freed from. From that stems the need to popularize the systematic assistance to the disincarnates who remain the prisoners of anguish and dissatisfactions. This must be done by the work of a team of companions specially dedicated to this type of assistance, work which demands the same amount of patience and understanding to that found in the nurses dedicated to the assistance of brothers and sisters segregated by the threads of psychosis, within the establishments dedicated to providing for the cure of mental ailments. Deeply feeling a similar need and wishing to recruit new groups of workers of goodness willing to help in the readjustment of those no longer in the physical plane and who have become distant from reality, our friend Andre Luiz produced this book, unlike any other found in his repertoire of a scholar, who has specialized himself on themes related to the soul. There is nothing more appropriate and just than this desire, because if ignorance requires the dedication of the teachers, and psychopathology depends on the abnegation of the doctors who employ the use of balanced dialogue in the practice of psychoanalysis, so it is that the mental alienation observed in the disincarnates require the fraternal assistance of friendly hearts, with enough understanding and an abundance of love to help in the existing spiritist centers now working to restore Christianity in its clear and simple form. This book, thus, presents an important synthesis in the effort of aiding those suffering from obsessive processes via the work of collaborators with varied talents. We ask the Master to sustain us all, disincarnate and incarnate workers, in the tasks to be accomplished, because, whether obsessed or obsessor, consciously or unconsciously thrown into a state of unbalance, whether in this world or in the beyond, they are our brothers and sisters begging our assistance, companions that belong to our terrestrial family. The assistance to the family is not a ministry that we should regulate to the sphere of the angels, but rather an untransferable obligation that we are obliged to embrace as our task. Emmanuel.
So we're back with our dear friend André Cabral. He's a Spiritist practitioner in the Spiritist group Path of Light in Long Branch, New Jersey. And we're just talking about the ins and outs of obsession, its different levels, how we can recognize in our daily lives. People can research more in the Medium's book, chapter 23. But as we were talking, André, about the therapy for it, which is named Disobsession, which is different from exorcism because you just don't expel the entity. We talk, there's a therapeutic process. But how does it work? André Luiz, through Chico Xavier, the same author of the book Astral City or Nosso Lar, wrote the book Disobsession for Spiritist practitioners. Can you tell us more about the importance and the goal of the book?
Yeah, it's a wonderful work. The book is specifically directed to those who intend to work with mediumistic activities. He is very detailing, even in small details, but every small details sums up, and it's part of the big deal. So he starts from the preparation, the education of the mediums, the theoretical teachings. Education is fundamental. You don't assign uneducated people, for example, to direct a project in NASA to take astronauts to the moon, because it's a very, very serious and delicate matter, right? You only employ people with highly skills, high degree of education and training. We have to do the same as far as mediumistic works, because it's a very delicate science. Most of us, we don't see what we are dealing with. We are dealing with the invisible. We are dealing with unknown forces. So we have to study the most we can. The Brazilian Federation of Spiritism have all the material already prepared and compiled to educate mediums and instructors, counselors. So we, in our Spiritist group in Path of Light in Long Branch, we used these materials. We took advantage of all the material that was already available. And of course, there are many other books channeled by very serious, very great spirits, written by respectable authors. In this book, André Luiz gave us a kind of roadmap for mediumistic works. He gave us details from little things, small details that sum up to a big, to the success of the whole activity. He starts from the education of the medium, the personal conduct, which is very, very important. He describes some case studies also in this book, And he basically gave us one roadmap for those who intend to work in spiritist practice, in medium mystic practice, and not only those the beginners, but also those who are already experienced under his vision now as a discarnate spirit coming from the spirit realm with a team of conductors, instructors, and go to the spiritist centers in Earth, and then he collects all this information and give us this beautiful gift, which is this book. It's a must reading for all the spiritist workers.
Exactly, because it has many tips for them, and it explains the ins and outs, and discipline is probably the main highlight. I know the listener can go to Amazon.com or EddieSayofAmerica.com and buy this very book, Disobsession by André Luiz through Chico Xavier. But just to tease them a little bit, what would be the main tips for spiritist practitioners who are willing to serve in this disobsession work? I mean, just the main things.
First of all, and above anything, a specific education. Kardec offers us the medium's book, but that's not all. We have to study, not only read, not just browse, but study the 5 basic works of Kardec. The Spiritist book, Gospel According with the Spiritism, which is very important. The lead may say, what does gospel have to do with this? Well, it's the key point. It's the moral education. And then the medium's book, the Genesis, what is Spiritism, all the Kardec's work. We have to study them. And like I mentioned before, there are many other books. We highly recommend André Luiz works. He writes many books specifically about medium mystical meetings, medium mystic sessions, when he follow his instructors from the spiritual realm directly to the spiritist centers. He brings us some experiences. He describes case studies. This is number 1, instruction. Study. Number 2, discipline. Very much. We have to be very disciplined because the spirits that we want to attract to help us, to engage us in this type of work are very serious spirits too. So serious spirits mean serious people. They have discipline. They have commitment. So we have to do the same. We have to be committed, involved, completely involved, body and soul, if we want to attract the good leaders in the spiritual realm. Of course, we will always attract the spirits, but we will determine the quality of the spirits that we want to attract.
Exactly.
Of course. Yes, and if we are serious and committed, of course, we will attract the serious and committed spirits.
And as you said, it's such a difficult work. It's a very therapeutic process, but we need to be well equipped as an individual and as a team, because there are laws that rule this work, and one of them we need to tell the people, because many people come to our centers, as you know, in our centers as well. They say, I want to work in the mediumistic meeting. I want to be there. I say, really? Are you sure? Are you sure what you're talking about? Because it's not entertainment. It's really not something that you go home and, okay, I can lead any type of life without consequences, because many of the spirits, especially Disobsession, they are allowed sometimes, the obsessors of people whom we're helping, to come and watch us. And they're like, really? Right, André? They're like, oh, really? You asked me to forgive that person? What about you in your life? You're not forgiving. So who are you to tell me that?
Exactly. The obsessors sometimes follow the advisor for days, for weeks, observing, probing, learning his or her weaknesses. And when the obsessor is finally allowed to manifest in the meeting during one session, he pours the entire menu that he noted to that day, trying to demoralize the advisor, to shake the harmony of the team. And sometimes they manage to do it. They get it.
They do.
And there is another must-reading is the book Dialogue with the Shadows. I don't know if it's already available in English.
No, it's not.
From the Portuguese, from the Brazilian author Emílio Miranda. Diálogo com as Sombras. Dialogue with the shadows, conversation with the shadows, that describes Hermínio's experience as an advisor, as a counselor in the spiritist, in a medium mystic, Disobsession works. And he brings us many case studies, many cases of obsessors in all different ways. Like I said, the spirits are discarnate people, so he described different people, different the intellectual, the avenger, the aggressive, the meek, the false prophet, all this.
And the leaders as you said about the Legion, there are always leaders, and it's amazing. It's so great that you're mentioning this, because I've come across people, André, who come to me and they're skeptical of it. They believe in spirits. They are spiritists. They believe in everything. They understand it, but they're like, no way, it can't be all that bad. I don't believe there is a leader of darkness. Okay, so you're not ready for this work, because that's how it happens. I mean, as much as there are criminals in the physical realm, there are criminal minds in the spiritual realm.
Exactly. The criminal mind here in Earth, they die. Then they disincarnate. And now what are they? Discarnate spirits. They are a spirit with an evil mind. And of course they want to continue their work in the other side of life. And they will gather followers, like here. If you want to form your own street gang, in a couple of weeks or maybe days, you're going to attract your followers. The same happens on the other side. And of course, they have purposes. They have discipline. They have training. There are serious organizations dedicated to evil on the other side. And they take like a contract sometimes. So it's very difficult to deal with this kind of situation when a person comes to us asking for help. Normally this happens during the week, not in the mediumistic session, because the mediumistic session is only for the qualified mediums. It's not a public session. It should never be a public session, because it's the environment itself, it's very delicate, very sensitive.
It's like a surgery, right?
Exactly. It's like a surgical
procedure. Exactly.
Exactly. Only qualified people can have access to that. And anything goes wrong in the team, you can compromise the whole work. There are both qualified teams in both sides of life, the incarnate team and the spirit team also.
And harm yourself, right? You can disturb the work and sometimes hurt even yourself, because you'll be receiving what's happening there. But Andrea, we need to stop for another break. When we come back, we have a question about the possibility of somebody who is feeling obsessed, okay?
Okay.
We will return to our program after these messages.
For the first time ever, the book Between Heaven and Earth by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is now in English. This is a novel that offers information about the relationship that exists in the activities of the spirit on the two planes of life. Purchase your copy today at www.ediseiofamerica.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediseiofamerica.com today. The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 Years of the Gospel According to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're in this beautiful conversation, getting to know more about obsession and disobsession. There's much to know, and there are some books in Spiritism that are already available in English for you who want to know more about it. The basics on this is in the Medium's book, chapter 23, by Allan Kardec. But as André Cabral was telling us here, there is the book, Disobsession, which is a great manual for Spiritist practitioners to know more about the preparation, the qualifications, the guidelines for those who want to join in this type of service. But as André was reminding us, we need to qualify ourselves. And the deepest, the most difficult one in mediumistic works in regards to rescue work of this obsession. So André, what about if somebody right now who is listening to us identify with some of the description that you've given us regarding obsession and they are feeling that they need a disobsession treatment? What would you say is the first step that they should give in order to engage into some form of therapy in that regard? Because if they're going to talk to a psychiatrist, if they are not a spiritist psychiatrist, they're going to shut them down thinking that they are crazy, or schizophrenic, hallucinating, etc. So what would you recommend that they do as a first step?
Okay, I talk about what I understand. I don't talk about what I don't understand. I don't understand about psychiatry, even though I respect and recognize their value. And in some cases, they are necessary. So is the psychologist as well. Mm-hmm. But nothing will heal a disobsession, because a disobsession is not a disease, it's not a sickness. Mm-hmm. It's a process. It's an obsession. It's a persecution. It's a harassment. Mm-hmm. And the only way to break this process is through education. We have to educate both parties, the obsessor and the obsessed one. But what kind of education? Moral education. Because the obsession is normally, generally, in most of the case, it's some kind of unfinished business that people had in sometimes even in the present incarnation, but most of the cases in previous incarnation.
And forgive me, André, to interrupt you, but as you're saying this, it just occurred to me that we have another book that at some point can portray what you're saying. Is the book entitled Obsession by the Spirit Manuel Filomeno de Miranda through Divaldo Franco. It's already available at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore's website, www.ssbaltimore.org. In that book, it's almost like a novel. It talks about the ins and outs and how somebody from previous life can come and play a role of obsessor and sometimes even attempt to destroy our lives.
Exactly, yeah. I highly recommend the book too. Okay, so the process of one obsession normally started 1 or 2, 3 incarnations past. So it continues over time. And of course, each one of us have our free will, and we are always constantly invited to improve ourselves, to educate ourselves. And this makes us, in this process of education, self-education, inner education, different of others. And each one of us has our own pace. So now in the present incarnation, one is in a better level of education, spiritual and moral education. So I'm talking about one average person, somebody living their daily life, the family and work, and a very common life, ordinary life. And then it starts noticing the signs of obsession, and then we reveal one real obsession. This process began, let's say, the past incarnation, one incarnation ago. The offender was, let's say, the most common case is a betrayal. When spouses they betray one another. And then now in the present incarnation, one is incarnated in a different scenario, and the other one is still feeling the hate, feeling that is still harmed, is still keeping that hate in his or her heart, and it of course is suffering, because hate is a poison that corrodes the person's heart, the person's life, entire life, and that makes that person remains in a very bad situation, spiritual status, suffering indefinitely. And then that person who felt offended, who was betrayed, who was abandoned previous incarnation, and still remains in pain, still remains in, quote, in hell, right? Identifies that person, that former spouse who betrayed in that incarnation, now in a new incarnation, in Earth, in 2012, in New York City, right? I found you, finally, I found you. Then it starts the obsession. But that person, the incarnate person now, doesn't know anything, because when we reincarnate, we temporarily lose the memories of the previous incarnations. So now I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in my life. Everything is, I feel sad. I feel depressed. I have bad thoughts, bad feelings. Everything goes wrong in my life. I don't know what's going on. This is signs, the most common signs of an obsession. But there's no medicine for that. The only way to keep the obsessor from the obsessed is by educating that person. And how are you going to persuade that person to forgive? Right? And then we go back to Jesus Christ. He said, forgive all sins. Forgive how many times? Peter asked, right? 7 times. He said, no, not only 7, but 7 times 70. And 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. And that means indefinitely. Because back then, 2,000 years ago, people, they were not very good at math. So 7 times 70 would be enough to describe a humongous number of times to forgive. So we have to forgive every time, every sin, every trespass. Because it's the law. Now comes the science again. We are not talking about religion. We are talking about science. If you don't forgive, you can never break those bonds, those unhealthy bonds that connect the person who still hates to the one who offended, right? So if you don't educate the heart of the obsessor, he will never leave. Of course, there are certain circumstances that, like in Earth, like in our daily life, when somebody is harassing us, we have the law to protect us. So in the spiritual world, in the spiritual realm, there is also, in the nature, in the universe, there are laws that protect those who deserve the protection. But if you still have bonds, if you still have the means of attraction, if you are still in debt with certain spirit, with certain person, discarnate person, you are in debt. You have to honor your debt. So you have to educate yourself to place yourself in a better spiritual status. That means you elevate your own vibration, your energy, and also you give your self-example to those who don't have yet the same insight. They didn't understand yet the need for forgiveness.
So then in that regard...
It's a long journey. It's a long journey. There's no... it's not math. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's a long journey. It's a complicated situation. It's a process.
Yeah, but as you said, it begins with us. So it's very empowering, because once we shift to positive thoughts, positive feelings, we are going to start shielding ourselves and also giving the other in the story, also the obsessor, an opportunity for him or her to be released from that pain and the wounds. So is this the reason why in Spiritism we understand that famous saying, without charity there is no salvation? Can you tell us more how that applies in the therapeutic process of disobsession?
Yes. Empty hands are the workshop of devil, right? It's said.
Yes, you're right.
So, yes, put yourself on the work. Serve without second intentions. Help one another. Love your neighbor. Love your enemy. Do to your neighbor as you do to yourself. Again, Jesus' teachings, right? So the master is, again, in our lives. Mm-hmm. We have to educate ourselves. We have to elevate morally every day. We have to extinguish, to expurgate the hate, the egotism from our hearts. The spirits, they classify egotism as the root of all evils. Mm-hmm. Just think, if you do to your neighbor exactly what you'd like to be done to you, the next day the world would be perfect, right? Mm-hmm. If you extinguish hate and egotism from the face of the planet, the next day the planet would be paradise. Mm-hmm. So the charity is the highest expression of love in action. When you practice charity, you are serving the purpose of the creation. You are serving our Father, our Creator. We attract the interest of the good spirits, of the good people. Mm-hmm. And we make ourselves feel good inside. And there is nothing that can replace this feel-good feeling. Nothing is better than that. You feel good to yourself. You feel that you've done something really good, and you don't expect any reward for that. Mm-hmm. It's just serving for the pleasure, for the habit of serving. Mm-hmm. Once you engage in this lifestyle, once you take all your free time, all your spare time, of course you have to manage to discipline your time between your professional work, your family, but there's also some hours in a week, in a day that you can dedicate to do something good for others. Mm-hmm. So this will also, under the eyes of God, and Andrea Luiz explains this in the book Nosso Lar, you are gathering, we are acquiring credits to yourself. Exactly. And this will make your arrival in the spiritual realm when you depart from earth, it gives you a better status there. Mm-hmm, so under the eyes of God, you have credit every time you practice the sincere charity. Mm-hmm. So without charity, there is no salvation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's perfect. Well, André, we thank you so much for the opportunity you've given us to understand more about this therapeutic process of the disobsession. What would be your final comments for the listener at Kardec Radio?
I invite everyone to study the Spiritist doctrine, to have this pleasure that I had one day to start seriously getting interested in the Spiritist doctrine. It's a complete science. It's when the religion and the science intersect with a perfect result. For those who intended to engage into the medium mystic practice, I advise much of education. Educate yourself, dedicate hours of study way before you start planning the practice itself. Education is fundamental. But above all, educate yourself, your heart, because Jesus needs qualified workers. In the other side of life, in the spiritual realm, things are perfectly like here. They have organization, they have teams, they have authorities, they delegate authorities, they share responsibilities and divide the job into teams. Mm-hmm. What we do here in Earth, in the Spiritist centers, in the medium mystic works, is just continue what they're doing on the other side. It's like they have their own team working there, but we're gonna part of the work it will be done by us, because in certain point we are necessary for our physical properties, and as we need them as a spirit, they need us as incarnate men and women. So we will work together. But after all, we are all people. Mm-hmm. Let's always look at them as people, discarnate people, our fellows who one day were here, like we are here now, and tomorrow we'll be there. Mm-hmm. So we are all spirits, incarnate spirits and discarnate spirits. Everything else is just study, and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I never keep myself from recommend the study of the gospel, because the teachings of Jesus, it's still the best guidance that we have.
Yeah, because they are universal and they are what we call the Christ consciousness. It's really like universal. It aligns so well with the best moral ethical standards that we could ever imagine in our lives, right?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much, Andre, and we are very grateful. We hope you come back to talk to us here at Kardec Radio. And again, we would like to recommend to all that the Spiritist group Path of Light can be found at www.pathoflightnj.org. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for this opportunity, for inviting me, and all the best for all your team.
All right.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. Reborn for Love, of the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk@gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and psychographed by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit May May, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listener. This is Marco Magalhães, and welcome to the segment Spiritism in Your Life. Today we're going to talk about the Spirit Andre Luiz, and I'll bring to you a brief summary of his amazing, productive work through the mediumship of Chico Xavier. Most of these books are bestsellers, and at the time they were brought, they were so novel. They contained so much new information regarding the spiritual world that some people wouldn't even believe that they were real. After rounds and rounds of discussions and studies, people started to realize that everything contained in this book was not only true, but it was a great gift from God to allow this communication to happen. So the first book, Nó Solar, or Astral City, brings to us his early days after this incarnation and his life as an accomplished physician incarnated in Brazil. Andre Luiz used to live a very busy life as a physician, and he describes in the beginning of the book that he had everything in life, but he was unable to translate all the gifts he had into something good and positive. Although he had a very good material life, he wouldn't understand a lot about the spiritual concepts of life. He was not taking care of himself as he should be, and he always had this feeling that he had wasted his time, wasted this opportunity. We're still showing signs of pride, and selfishness, among many other problems that he encountered while on earth. Right after this incarnation, we hear for the first time the concept of the unconscious suicide, or indirect suicide, where André Luiz is accused of committing suicide, although he did not kill himself directly. He, throughout a collection of abuses and bad decisions and mistakes done through life, ended up disincarnating due to a cancer, shortening his life, which translates into an unconscious suicide. And we hear about his spiritual mentors and the life in a spiritual city in detail, including the work, the type of music, nutrition, the architecture, and all the social relationships that goes along in a spiritual city, in this case, not solar. He starts to transform himself through hard work, and he starts to get rid of the old man into the new man. And we see that transformation end in the book The Messengers, which is the next one, where André Luiz is going to join a group that helps incarnate spirits. We start to understand in more detail the interaction between the spiritual world and the physical world. So we have a chance to understand a complete description of the disincarnation process. And also, most importantly, we see the importance of working on your inner transformation and the importance of the work as a medium, as the messenger. In the next book, Missionaries of Light, André Luiz shows himself as a much more knowledgeable man, giving very detailed and technical view on many processes. His mentor, Alexandre, invites him to a journey to Earth to work with his mediumship. And now, André Luiz, the physician from Earth, starts to give us an amazing description of medicine in the spiritual world and physical world. So he talks about the pineal gland, or the spiritual gland, vampirism, obsession, mediumistic phenomena, and a complete description of a reincarnation process. So in this book now we have a more complex description of the interaction between the spiritual world and the physical world. In the next book, The Workers of the Life Eternal, André Luiz is now trained. And this is the first time he's actually working and not really in training mode. And he works with his mentor, Geronimo. Some interesting topics here. Again, they go into detail over the process of disincarnation, euthanasia, the obsessors, and the transitory house called the Fabiano de Cristo house. So in this book we have a manual on the process of disincarnation. And in the next book, In the Greater World, André Luiz talks about the psychic disorders from the spiritual point of view, giving a very detailed technical view on these processes. That includes madness, psychosis, fixed ideas, epilepsy, spiritual chemistry, addictions and influence of spirits, spiritual influence in places like bars, pubs, and other public places. And now he's now a teacher, giving us the glimpse of the relationship between the physical body and the spiritual body. His next book, which is among one of my favorites, is Liberation, or in Portuguese, Libertação. This is one of the most touching books, because now André is trained in doing a very, very complex mission on Earth. His knowledge is impressive, and he works together with Gubbio. They go to spiritual cities in the umbral and to abyssal areas, describing the dark areas, and the idea is to rescue a spirit called Gregorio, which is the leader of one of the spiritual cities. Now, in this book, which is an eye-opener, we have an encyclopedia on the effects of complex obsessions, guilty, jealousy, and many other vices in our spiritual life, not only physical life. He continues on in the next book, which is called Between Heaven and Earth, and this is one of the most beautiful stories of this series, describing the mission to help a family with multiple difficulties. Now we're talking about familial relationships. Interesting topics on this book: the power of prayer and how are the prayer answered, suicide and the effects of suicide in the spiritual body, spirits that are disincarnated as kids. It's a very interesting topic. Love, family, and forgiveness. So this is a beautiful story. The next book, which is In the Domain of Mediumship, goes along the description of a science behind mediumship. So the mentor Aulus talked about interesting topics, including the mental current, psychophony, the psychoscope, clairvoyance, and the physical effects, all things that we're now starting to get more and more used to in spiritist centers. In the next book of the series, Action and Reaction, he's back to the umbral and to the abysms. Together with this instructor Druso, he goes into the peace mansion in the umbral and describes through different examples the law of cause and effect and the consequences of our actions. Now we see examples of maternal love, filial ingratitude, collective rescues, and how we as spirits ask for specific conditions in order to clear our very, very long debts. So now we have an image of the mathematics of the law of cause and effect. The next book of the series is The Mechanism of Mediumship. It's a technical description of mediumship, I would say part 3 of the series. Now we're getting to the more complex compendium of mediumship. Now we go through physics, photons, waves, radiations, and all the perspective from the spiritual world, mental matter, the mental fluidic current, and Jesus and mediumship. Now this is now an advanced level of mediumship, but it's a very, very interesting book. The next book is Sex and Destiny. Sex and Destiny describes an extremely important topic for our society, which is love, sex, and how do we make the good use of this powerful energetic resource. So we have a detailed analysis of human relationships, including sex, polygamy, divorce, sexual crimes, everything based on a spiritual view. And we're able to see through this the consequences of all those actions in our spiritual life. And then Andrea Luiz continues on with the book Disobsession, which is, again, now it's not a novel, it's a must-read for everyone involved in mediumistic meetings in a spiritist center, which basically gives direct descriptions and guidelines for meetings. And the final book on this series is called And Life Goes On. So now in this book, we tell the story of Evelina and Ernesto and the challenges of the processes of disincarnation and incarnation and family relationships, especially when spirits and us are challenged with the truth. So there are interesting topics here. And two spirits that go through disease difficulties meet again after disincarnation, and then they realize later that there was a complex network of problems through their families that united their families. And now both of them have to go back and help their families to sort out all the difficulties that they were going through. And of course, there are many other books that unfortunately I don't have time to describe in detail. We can say that Andrea Luiz is a messenger because he was the first to give us this complete and detailed description of the spiritual life and work. He's a good teacher because he's bringing some of the most novel and intriguing concepts in spiritism and science today, teaching us with his own experience what we need to do to evolve. And he's a friend. He's humble, simple, friendly, and he describes everything as someone trying to help us, as someone who is right beside us, and he never puts himself above us, always on our side. So this is a very brief description of the work of Andrea Luiz. And of course, if you want to know more, I would recommend you to start reading the series of Andrea Luiz, which is definitely going to help you tremendously understanding a lot of things in your life. Dear friends, as we're coming again to the end of our segment today, I would like to thank you for listening and remember the message that Jesus brought to us. Love one another always, my friends, and so be it.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. I am Kirsten DeMello, your host. We are giving continuation to the study of Part 3 of the Spirit's book, in particular, the law of reproduction. It's very interesting because oftentimes we have this misconception about the law of reproduction. Perhaps we might automatically think about the propagation of the human species or of other species, the animal kingdom, or other kingdoms. But it's far and above that. It pushes us to really open up our minds as the spirits talk to us about something that's very pertinent in our day-to-day life. For example, the most recent tragedy that occurred in Connecticut has left many minds, religious or not, spiritist or not, questioning why and forcing us to reflect. And we know as spiritists, things are not by chance. God, in His great wisdom, never allows anything to happen unless it's beneficial on some level, or rather on many levels. Nothing that God does is useless. We learn this in the spiritual literature. God does nothing useless. Everything has a purpose. So in question 691, we learn that the distinctive and dominant characteristic of primitive races is they develop in a brute strength at the expense of intellectual prowess. And the spirits tell us that the opposite is occurring nowadays. Humans act more through their intelligence than through physical strength, and yet they accomplish 100 times more because they have placed the forces of nature at their service, which the animals cannot do. So there we learn that through our free will and through our ability to develop our intellect, we accomplish much more than animals do. But the irony in that situation is that we can be very intellectually developed and even come in a body that is quote-unquote perfect looking and even attractive. We can have a very disturbed mind, as we've witnessed most recently of the recent events, or we can have our morale at such a level that it's not up to par with the rest of the society that we're living in. And we know that God does this on purpose to help push these brothers and sisters of the world who are not yet at the same moral level that we are at. So nowadays we see that this intellect is very much developed, but we're still sometimes here and there lacking that moral development. But rest assured, everyone's time will come. We are all progressing, all evolving. Some slower than others, some faster than others. And when we learn the spiritual literature, it is up to us how fast or how slow we want to go, depending upon how we utilize our free will. And what's interesting is question 692, when Kardec asked the spirits, is the improvement of animal and vegetable species through science contrary to natural law? Wouldn't it be more in conformance with that law to allow things to follow their normal course? So what is he asking? He's asking, is it right for us to intervene in the progress of the animal and vegetable species? And it's interesting what the spirits tell us. They tell us the following. Everything must be done to arrive at perfection. Humans themselves are an instrument that God uses as a means for accomplishing the divine ends. Since perfection is the goal toward which nature tends to favor, such perfection is to correspond to those ends. So it's fascinating, dear listeners, that as we learn that we should utilize our intelligence to help push progress forward, and that it's okay to intervene respectively and with great respect and reverence to the creation of God to help push progress forward. And it's interesting because Kardec and the good noble spirits never leave any rock unturned. Because in the sub-question of 692, they say the following. But in their efforts to improve various species, humans are generally motivated by personal sentiment that has no other goal than to increase their own enjoyments. Doesn't this diminish their merit? So what are they asking, in other words? Well, people are doing this just so their lives become easier. Is that right? Isn't that selfishness? And the spirits answer wisely. What does it matter that their merits are void, provided progress is made? It is up to them to render their labor praiseworthy through their intention. Besides, by means of such a labor, they exercise and develop their intelligence, and it is from this aspect that they derive the greatest benefit. So we see here, dear friends, that nothing within God's kingdoms and all of His creation does He allow unless it is useful for us and for those around us. And as difficult as it is at times for us, because we don't yet have this great perspective, sometimes it's difficult for us to see tragedies that occur, hardships that we have to endure. But it has multiple reasons, because as we learn here in questions 691, 692, and 692A, we learn that everything that others do affect us, has an effect on us as a society, as a humanity, and as the world. We realize that it reverberates through. And although it's tragic and it's sad, it also pushes hundreds of thousands of people to reflect of the purpose in our lives and to readjust or recalibrate, tune in to our spirituality, because that is the purpose of our lives, is to tune in to our spirit mentors and guides, is to tune into our purpose, to align ourselves with these divine laws that we seek to every week study and to go more in depth to reflect about. And we always encourage you to go and read and study yourselves, as always. And our heartfelt prayers go out to those who have recently suffered in Connecticut. And we know that God is forever just. And wherever those spirits may be at this time, we send them many blessings and healing thoughts and vibrations. And until next week, we wish you many blessings.
Dear listener, as we get to the end of the show today, we are going to dedicate a moment to prayer for our enemies. Because the tragedy that happened yesterday in Connecticut is just a glimpse of what the fury of our enemies can do in our lives. Destroy ourselves physically, emotionally, and our society. So spiritually speaking, we need to pray. And we are going to actually pray with the help of Allan Kardec in the book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 28. Before we do that, we'd like to prepare our hearts for this prayerful moment. And to do so, we're going to stream in a joyful tone, because when we talk to God, it is joyful. We are going to stream to you the instrumental part of the song Holy Night by James Marotta. Let us listen to this as an invitation so we can connect at higher levels, preparing us for our prayerful moment today at Kardec Radio. Dear listener, it was actually the holy night, the holiest of all nights on the earth, when Jesus was incarnated. He came to invite us to a shift in all of our hearts. And it's still a job to be done. In the depths of our minds, we also need to open our hearts to pray for those who wish us ill. As Allan Kardec says in the Gospel according to Spiritism, prayer is a way to communicate with God. It's a way to relieve our hearts from sadness and to replenish ourselves with new energies, renewing ourselves to keep on going, even though we may not know what's going to happen next. We know that God will provide to us a beautiful and kind renewing moment to all of us. May this prayer go to all the hearts and minds who right now, no matter where they are on the earth, are feeling unsettling forces against them. As Kardec says in item 46, Jesus said, "Love even your enemies." This maxim reveals to us what is most sublime in Christian charity. However, with it, Jesus does not mean that we must have for our enemies the same affection we have for our friends. With his words, he tells us to forget their offenses, to forget the evil they have done to us, to repay their evil with goodness. Besides the merit of this, in God's eyes, it shows others what is truly superior. Dear listener, join us now with an open mind and open heart in a prayer that was beautifully put together by Allan Kardec to lead us into praying for those who wish us ill. Dear God, I forgive those who come to my mind at this moment for the evil they have caused me and want to cause me, just as I want you to forgive me and them, to forgive me for the wrongs I may have committed. If you have placed them in my path as a trial, may your will be done. Dear God, keep from me the thought of slandering them and from any malevolent desire against them. Enable them not to feel any joy for the misfortunes that may strike them, or any upset for the benefits that may be granted them, so that my soul may not be tainted with thoughts unbefitting a Christian. May your goodness, O Lord, be extended over them, thereby leading them to have better sentiments towards me. Good spirits, inspire me to forget evil and remember the good. May neither the hatred, the rancor, nor the desire to repay evil with evil enter my heart, for hatred and revenge belong only to evil spirits, whether incarnate or discarnate. Instead, may I be ready and willing to extend a helping hand and repay his or her evil with good, and to come to their aid, if I can. To prove my words sincere, I wish for an opportunity to be useful to them, but most of all, dear God, keep me from doing so out of pride or ostentation, or of oppressing them with humiliating generosity, which would cause me to lose the benefit of my act. For then I would deserve these words of Christ to be applied to me. You have already received your reward. Dear listener, as we invite the heart of Christ in his ultimate healing attitude, we invite you to spend this week in a very prayerful way, because in a week from now, we have one of the most beautiful programs of the year. It's about Emmanuel and the book 2,000 years ago. It's about the beautiful encounter of the Roman senator Publius Lentulus with Jesus. It's an interview with Joka Daladon from the United Kingdom. He's going to be sharing with us his thoughts about these beautiful minds who have put together this book 2,000 years ago. Not only that, but we'll also stream the very dialogues more about Emmanuel and probably also a short excerpt of the screenplay put together by Jocko Deladon and his group at the United Kingdom years ago. We have a lot to share with you because Kardec Radio is here solely to nourish your soul. We wish you lots of joy in this week and in the upcoming days of your life, whether in the incarnate or the discarnate realm.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.